blood is thicker than water, declared another. Let slip the dogs of war in good earnest upon all Indians. News of the escalating violence shook Washington. To bring order to the Southwest, President Ulysses S. Grant sent his most respected Indian fighter to Arizona. A veteran of the Civil War, General George Crook had been fighting Indians ever since. Though he would prove ruthless in his pursuit of Apaches, Crook had an unusual empathy for Indians.
General Crook, from the perspective of our own tribe, was one of the generals who tried hardest to understand things from an Apache's perspective. And it was something that our people at that time greatly appreciated, that there was somebody who would actually talk with them.
Crook was forever talking about how intelligent Apaches were. Well, he was a firm believer that with proper forms of formal education, Apache people could quickly become civilized, quote unquote, and become upstanding members of society.
Crook was charged with implementing a new federal Indian policy. Instead of treating native tribes as sovereign nations, as the U.S. had been doing for more than a century, Indians would now be wards of the state. Over the next decade, the American Army would force tribe after tribe onto reservations.
The reservation becomes this dominant way of containing Indian people. This place where Indian people can be contained and then worked on, right? Transformed and changed so that they can have a future within American society.
Crook's strategy was as simple as it was difficult to enforce. His basic idea was that if Apache people would stay on their reservations, he would do everything he could to make their lives comfortable. But those who refused and who continued raiding, he vowed to hunt down to the very last man.
10 years earlier, the Apaches' neighbors, the Navajos, had faced a similar choice: comply with the American demands or fight. The Navajos chose war. After a brutal military campaign, the American Army forced them into submission. Survivors were marched off their ancestral land to a distant reservation. Along the way, hundreds died of starvation and disease. Apaches knew this history well.
The Navajo people and the Apache people knew one another. They shared information. There was a whole network of information exchange between the tribes in the area.
Many Apaches reluctantly agreed to settle on reservations. Crook played Apaches against each other. He offered them incentives to become scouts for the U.S. Army and lead the hunt for Apaches who refused to give in.
Yeah, we you and Dad, it's a lot of quick kind of no teen of John and Ton with Lindy. Ewa, that been on you scouts does little. Scouts, Leo will take on a tea. The Scouts is Leo, he take on a tea. Yeah, we you be so. And that baby so he cannot gee, can't be done ID. She was a how much there let lancing. How you shot the engineer let lancing.
For several years, as one by one Apache chiefs agreed to reservation life, Cochise and the Chiricahuas continued to fight. But the time came when the great Chiricahua leader realized his people could not resist forever.
Cochise recognized that the Anglo-Americans were a more formidable foe than the Mexicans. They had better technology. Their army was far more efficient. And he sensed that there was too many of them. There's so many people compared to his people.
After a decade of war, Cochise agreed to halt the killing and to end Apache raids north of the Mexican border. In return, the Americans would create a reservation for the Chiricahua on their ancestral homeland, a pristine wilderness of mountains, canyons, streams, and open fields, prime land in the eyes of the settlers.
The United States told them, well, all you have to do is just stay in this one spot. That was the arrangement they had made in order to stay in their own land.
With minimal interference from the U.S., the Chiricahua lived much as they had for generations, raiding into Mexico whenever they needed horses and supplies. But just 2 years later, Cochise died, and the deal he had struck with the Americans was put at risk.
Cochise's death was an irreplaceable loss. No one would ever take his place. No one would ever unite the various bands of Chiricahua the way Cochise succeeded in doing.
The death of Cochise brought out what the Americans thought was an opportunity to open up that area of land for mining and settlement, and that without leaders such as Cochise, they would be much easier to eventually conquer.
With Cochise gone, the federal government decided to move the Chiricahua 150 miles north to a mosquito-ridden reservation called San Carlos. This would open the valuable Chiricahua land for American settlement and appease the Mexicans who were fed up with Apache raiding. A young reservation agent named John Clum was sent from San Carlos to deliver the news. Reluctantly, the Chiricahuas agreed to move. Clum's final meeting was with Geronimo's brother-in-law, Chief Ho. Ho stuttered, so Geronimo spoke for him. "We will move to San Carlos," Geronimo told Clum. "Just give us a little time." That night, after strangling their own dogs so the barking would not give them away, Geronimo, Ho, and some 700 Chiricahuas slipped away. Clum was furious. Blaming Geronimo, not Ho, he became obsessed with capturing the Indian he believed responsible for the double cross. On April 21st, 1877, Geronimo rode into Clum's carefully laid trap. As he arrived at Ojo Caliente, New Mexico, to trade some horses, dozens of Apache scouts, including Cochise's son, Naiche, surrounded him. They carted him back to San Carlos in chains.
He thought he was going to die. He thought he would be executed.
He understands that he may not die in battle, something that his power tells him this will never happen. But it didn't say much about him dying at the end of a hangman's rope.
Clum threw Geronimo into the San Carlos guardhouse, confident that he would soon be hanged. But Clum was unexpectedly relieved of his command. The new reservation agent saw no need to keep Geronimo locked up. After 4 months, he was released from the guardhouse, but he was hardly free. Soldiers treated him like any Apache on the reservation. They took away his gun, made him wear an identification tag, forced him to attend a daily head count, and demanded he obtain an official pass to go anywhere, even to hunt for food. They ordered him to plant vegetables and dig ditches.
It was too hot and too rocky and too thorny. If there was any good land, it probably belonged to somebody else.
There was nothing there. They didn't like it at all.
Not even the dogs like it there.
To top it off, they were expected to become farmers. Not only are we not farmers, but there's nothing to farm.
For 4 years, Geronimo struggled with life on the reservation. Then, in the summer of 1881, he was drawn to the startling message of a charismatic Apache medicine man called the Dreamer. A former military scout well-versed in American ways, he urged a return to traditional Apache life. Apaches came from miles around to attend his ceremony. The Dreamer marked east, south, west, and north with sacred cattail pollen. People circled around him as he preached. Apaches should not take revenge against the white man, the Dreamer said. Usen would see that the Americans suffered for their sins in the afterlife. It was a plea for unity and peace, for a people who had seen little of either.
De agat ehinan este hisha